So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Jenks Center. I'm Hillary Salentano. I'm the event coordinator. And we have Joseph Livni here this evening. We're so happy to have him here. I'm just going to read you a few paragraphs on his life because it's been wide and there's been a lot that you've accomplished. So I'd like to just let you know what that is. He was busy creating and applying mathematical modeling of aircraft physics from 1979 to 2013, so for 34 years. The model certified that aircraft systems like fuel, hydraulic, electrical, and flight control, etc. will withstand severe vibrations during flight. Other models serve to demonstrate structural integrity during hard landing and during emergency landings on ground and water. For aircraft in service, Joseph Livni generated and utilized models to diagnose and fix failures of systems due to excessive vibration. After retirement, Joseph Livni turned to use his experience in mathematical modeling to investigate controversial topics in biological and social phenomena. In academic terms, he changed direction from aerospace engineering to biophysics and sociophysics. So this book is a result of that observation. So thank you so much for being here. We're really pleased to have you, and this is really exciting. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Okay, is it okay? Do you hear me there? Yeah. Thank you also for coming. Hillary already thanked you, but I have to thank you too. And true, my background is engineering, and I'm not going to talk to you about those vibration issues because yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about vibration. If somebody wants to hear about that, that will be another occasion. I will talk about American constitutionalism. I'm neither American nor a lawyer. And I will talk about American constitutionalism precisely because I'm neither American nor a lawyer, and I will explain during this presentation why it's better to see what I saw, how it's easier to see what I saw if you're neither American nor a lawyer. I'm going to talk about constitutionalism. I think everybody has an idea what constitutionalism is about. However, in order to be on the same page, it is better if I will give you a concise and precise formulation of the term constitutionalism. I found this formulation by Walter Hamilton. It's not the famous Hamilton. It's probably he's famous too, but not that one. And he encapsulated the answer. It will help to discuss the essence of the book. Constitutionalism is the name given to the trust which men repose in the power of words engrossed on parchment, and it's important here, to keep a government in order. So, people trusting the content of parchment is unusual. Most Americans take this for granted. For them, the terms constitution and respecting what's in the Constitution, it's their second nature. No, it's first nature. It's but in the world at large, this issue doesn't exist, and I'm talking both the tyrannical states, societies, and even in democratic societies. societies existed before writing. So therefore, obviously, the civilization didn't start with parchment and with trusting it. And rules also existed before writing. And rules were given not by constitution or by laws, they were given by rulers. People needed rules. Sometimes they didn't like the rules, but they needed it because if there are no rules, then society falls apart. They trusted rulers, again, for the same reason. They liked them, they didn't like them, it's a material, but it's better to listen to a ruler than to allow everybody to go by his own ideas. For example, that was the case in people trusting rulers in ancient Egypt. You heard about Pharaoh. In Rome, medieval Europe, China, and in contemporaneous Russia, Iran, China, and Pakistan, people trust their rulers even if they don't like them. This is how we live. That's how they behave. And people started to trust mostly the power of God. It's normal. It's by definition of God. And therefore they attributed that rulers are ruling in the name of God. That gave the legitimacy to rulers. And the rules, which was the most important part of society, are decreed by rulers. Now, there is a difference between constitution and constitutionalism. Egypt and Turkey have a constitution, but there is no constitutionalism there. In these states, there is a constitution, is not a parchment of words trusted by people. For example, in UK and in Israel, these places I know, there is no constitution, however there is constitutionalism. It means that even in these two countries, the government tries to rule to legislate a rule. It is considered non-constitutional and it's cancelled. That is constitutionalism. And this is the reason I just said that not being a lawyer helps you more, because I'm not going to talk about constitution. What's the content of the constitution, that's what the lawyers deal with. Constitutionalism, it's how society behaves according to those rules or principles that the Constitution decree. So now I'm going to explain how did I get to this issue. The question was, how did this trust in a parchment come into existence? If it's rare or almost impossible, people want rules, but usually you don't take, this parchment says to you how to behave. It's not really natural. So we all know about the Covenant of Israel. It's full of, we learned about it. Covenant of Israel is a parchment where it says, do this, don't do that, a lot of commandments, and people, at least according to what we learned from the books, the people obey to those rules, and that's how Israel was ruled. How do we know that Israel didn't have a ruler? Israel in the time of the judges, for example. First of all, the book of Judges says so. There was no king in Israel. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Believe me, it's written there. And, okay, some people interpret it differently, and many people even say, so it's written there, what? That doesn't mean that there was no ruler. But the archaeological evidence confirms that. The archaeological evidence shows that in the time of the judges, the archaeologists call it Iron Age 1, funny, and there was no stratification in Israel. Archaeologists have all kind of methodology to find out how complex a society was and what about its stratification. They go mostly burial sites, housing, and pottery. They cannot. That's what they can find out, because otherwise they cannot guess how sites existed. But what they see that, for example, in Egypt, we all know that Pharaoh had the pyramid as a burial site. Imagine, huge thing. Probably it created inflation that it costed that much, but that's how. And the poor people, or the regular peasant, probably didn't even have a burial site or anything like that. And the housing, so in Israel, there is no really burial sites with monuments, with inscriptions. They found bones, that's all. People were thrown into the, I don't know, maybe they said Kaddish or not, but it's not clear whether, but everybody had a similar type of burial. The housing, usually the houses were, there was little towns in a form of ellipse and nothing in the middle, as opposed to Transjordan, which was very similar, but there is always a construction in the middle, which could be, we don't know, it could be the house of the ruler or some sort of administrative thing like this Jenks Center, whatever, but it was, this is important, and there the important people were there. Pottery in Israel, as opposed to the Philistines and the Canaanites, it was very simple. There was no color, nothing. It's as simple, just it was the pottery, functional, and some would call it even ugly. But it was nothing like the pretentious Phoenician. They called this style and that style, bicolor, bichromatic, monochromatic, all kind of. While in Israel there was nothing like that. Okay, now I'll come to what we all learned in high school. High school? Magna Carta. Did you learn Magna Carta? No. Okay. Well, hey, Anna, did you? No. Okay. Anyway, we were told once, many years ago, that the Magna Carta is where constitutionalism started. That was the example of the American Constitution. The idea to have a constitution. Yes, it's true, Magna Carta was also a parchment, for sure. But no one in England considered that its words had power to keep the government in order. It so happened that the founding fathers of the revolution, when they wanted to ask the king, let us rule ourselves, they came to the king and they wrote, this is your constitution. The Magna Carta allows us to be free and to and to take our destiny in our hands. But that was fundamentally the lawyers among the founding fathers. Lawyers will find always something that helps them to convince the other side, or not convince, but to try to convince the other side that they owe us something. In chapter 4 of the book explains that this is not constitution. Concessions of rulers in order to maintain their legitimacy existed forever, and I gave example about the Roman Empire and many others in history, that when there is a crisis, then the legitimacy of the ruler is diminished, and then they make concessions to the people, and then after that they forget about it, and everything comes back to place. They are temporary concessions. So where did constitutionalism come to America? In spite of what I said, constitutionalism arrived to America indeed from England, but not through the Magna Carta, but through the Mayflower Compact. That you know. Okay. And that was a parchment enjoying the trust which men repose in the power of words engrossed on it. That is chapter 1. I start my book with the pilgrims, and the first thing they did, they arrived on a Saturday night, and for the pilgrim, Saturday night is Sunday is the Sabbath, and Saturday night is already the Sabbath starts. So they stayed on the boat. They did nothing. They prayed, and after only Saturday evening, they landed. They came on land. The first thing they did, they wrote a parchment. This is what we are going to do, and this is how we want to be governed. And it's not really as great as a constitution, but it shows that those people needed a piece of paper, and that's how they lived. Why? Because the pilgrims they were a sort of Puritan religion, and they learned that there is a covenant, and the covenantal way of life is around the covenant, and it's not around rulers or people who are above you. God is above you, and God wrote the covenant, and and that's how they believed. And the covenant is the thing that we have to follow, not what any other says. And this was the idea of the Mayflower Compact. Now, the Mayflower Compact is not a religious document. And this is important, because this is not about religion or faith or anything. It's about how the society works. And the model is true. It's the model goes by the covenantal model that existed in various covenantal religions, and the pilgrims were one of them. And this is how it happened that this great land started with an idea. Israel wandered in the desert before entering its promised land. The pilgrims crossed the ocean and landed in their promised land. The chapter portrays the two similar beginnings. Both started with little chances. Both changed the civilized world. So, how can a society be governed by the words engrossed on parchment? In chapter 5, I describe that this is due to a certain structure of the covenantal society, a certain organization, and a certain power flow. The covenantal society, all the covenantal societies look similar. But their structure is different from regular societies, and most of the world is normal societies. There are hierarchies where there is a ruler, administration, police, everything. It's that pharaonic model has different variations, but it's all the same. The structure of the covenantal society has no formal hierarchy. The organization is informal. What I'm saying is there is an organization. There are office holders. For example, the pilgrims called them elders. But the power flow comes from the power flows from the community assembly. There is very frequent community assemblies. You can guess every Sunday they assembled, and believe me, they did politics there. That's how it works. They assemble and then they say this is right, this is wrong, and they controlled the office holders. The office holders had to carry out what, and if they didn't, they were not office holders anymore. There were no elections at the beginning. Later there were, but it doesn't matter. Once you are a leader and nobody follows you, you're not a leader anymore. Chapter 6 asks another questions. Okay, rules can be on parchment, but how can a parchment enforce its rules? Pharaoh had police, they put Joseph in jail, we know that. And every king, that's what it is. He's a military force and discipline, so he can enforce easily his rules. We explain here different covenantal societies that we know today, and all the covenantal societies have the same idea. The assembly is in charge of enforcing the rules. It works like the credit score and the security clearance in America of today. The assembly knows everybody how he behaves, and if somebody owes money or is a traitor or he behaves not nicely with others, there are offenses, or they, God forbid, they don't even keep the Sabbath, then they are rebuked. And if rebuking doesn't help, they will be discussed in public and ostracized, and then there are more severe punishments like banishment and excommunication. The difference between the two is banishment is for a while. If he starts behaving, then the assembly will say, you know what, he shows that he's better. Excommunication is forever and forever. I hope we will not suffer that. So the question is, who invented this covenantal system and how? Chapter 7 answers that inventing a covenantal society is impossible. The covenantal society, in order to work, needs a certain psychology, what I said, that everybody checks the others. He looks if he's behaving, and everybody, for example, in the Puritans, we know that the Puritan knew that he is watched, and he also watched the others, and that's how it worked. Everybody watches everybody. In the regular society, the virtue is to mind your own business. That's not the case in the covenantal society. Everybody minds everybody else's business. And he knows that he's also watched by others. But this is the psychology. There are also institutions. One of the most important things, and this we learned through a mathematical model of how the society controls itself, and you have to have an institution against poverty. What I mean is against total poverty. People who have nothing, they have nothing to lose, and those people, no matter what you do, they will try to stay alive, and rules or not rules, they will have for them transgression is not a problem. So every covenantal society had such an institution of helping the very poor. And then there is rules how to accept new members. They were very strict in accepting new Puritans. They check them, their credentials, who knows them, where do you know them. That's in Puritans. The Jews did the same thing. It's not easy to convert to Judaism. In other religions, they try to convert you and just show a little bit of interest, and it goes much easier. Here, they will make your life not easy until they are convinced that you sincerely want to be one of them. And they have institutions of taxing. Most covenantal societies were autonomous, and the way it worked, that it's not like we pay taxes to the IRS now, that everybody reports. For the covenantal societies were taxed as a society, and inside the society decided who pays what. So it's not that you declare that you made this much. They knew everybody how much he made, and according to that, the assembly said, you know what, you can pay more, you don't have to pay. That's because these were small communities that could find out easily who can pay and who can't. There was what I just said, covenantal justice, which because they had rules, they had to find. They also had the idea that somebody is guilty, and if he's guilty, they decided how to punish him. There was covenantal education, and most importantly, you had to have frequent assemblies. And one of my researchers came to the conclusion that if the Sabbath was not every 7 days, and that's where the week comes from. Before that, there was nothing to 7 days, because 7 days is not a natural period like a month, which goes by the moon. Then if you take more than 10 or 14 days between assemblies, such a society will fall apart. That's mathematics, nothing more. So in chapter 12, I take back the idea of how the covenantal system was invented. All these things existed probably when Israel already landed, crossed the river Jordan, and they had at least the embryos of all these institutions by chance. This is how evolution works. There is a random mutation which allows, that's in biology. You have a random mutation that allows you to live in certain conditions, and then that particular species with that mutation, for example, a giraffe can eat the leaves in the highest trees, and in every environment where the high trees exist, high trees, they don't care about the grass. So the giraffe exists in such an environment, and the same for every species. It has a mutation, and then when things are worse, they survive, others are extinct. So that means that all the other covenantal societies that exist today, they copied the previous one. And the book mentions what are the covenantal societies I know. Probably there are some that I don't know. I didn't investigate all of them, but I tried to find as many as I could. I'm talking about the early Christians. Obviously, that is not a secret, that the early Christians had the same organization as the Second Temple Jews. The Jewish diaspora, obviously, they are a continuation of Judea. Now, there is a group that very few people heard about them. They are the Waldensians Christians in the Alps. They are a small ethnic group in the Alps, between Italy and France, and there they maintained their organization and structure and everything from early Christianity, because they are in the mountains. They were apart, somehow far away, and they kept the same way as their ancestors. There is a group in Romania which they called Obște, the same thing. They from early Christian times, they maintained their customs. Another one also in France, in the Pyrenees, it's called the Gascony is in the Pyrenees, vicinal network. They call themselves neighbors, and this is why they are called vicinal network. Now, the Calvinists are also covenantal societies in Swiss, Dutch, and others. The Calvinists copied the Waldensians, and it's documented. For example, one of the people that worked with Calvin is Olivetan, who was a Waldensian, and this is where all this idea came. And then Puritans and Presbyterians in America, and obviously the Pilgrims that I talked about them. So they all share the essential institutions that keep them to survive: justice administration, enforcement by peer pressure, nurtured by frequent assemblies. They are resistant to hierarchies. I don't know, I lived in Israel, and in Israel, if somebody tries to tell you, do this, do that, I don't know, they say, who are you? This is, and that could be a policeman, I don't know, even as a student, I was at the Technion, and Ben-Gurion came to give a speech, and there was a guy who started to be really, but you made this mistake, I don't know, there was a boat, Altalena, a big story, the respect for David Ben-Gurion, it is not like it should be, and it's not like anywhere else. So anyway, the resistance to hierarchies exists in every covenantal society, and as I said, combating poverty. So I come back to words on parchment. What makes people trust their power? Why do governments take them seriously? In chapter 8, it's about covenantal psychology. We are taught every day in every covenantal society that you have to trust the parchment. It's in the Jewish prayer Shema Israel. We say you shall love these commandments that I give you today. Today, that's the day when he gave the commandments, and you shall teach your children. And you will do that at home, on the road, day and night. It's in your mind. The covenant is most, it has to be respected. This is the essence of that type of society. Expect to be watched. And there is peer pressure. So the question is, okay, so this works. Can it go wrong? Yes. In Salem, Massachusetts, it went wrong, terribly wrong. And I'm talking about the witch trials. That was this issue that people, because there was peer pressure, and the peer pressure went in the wrong direction, saying these are witches and there is a devil and all that, and it was a not pandemic, it was an epidemic, just local. That's the difference. But the good news is that the same peer pressure that created the beginning, the infection and the fact that it spread, the same thing at a point people saw that it can't be right. If what, my wife, she's not a witch. She makes my life miserable, but she's not a witch. And once you start doubting, the doubt started to spread. And that's like the vaccine or antibody, you can call it anyway. And so the good news is that in the covenantal society, at least for that example, it's probably that happened in many places, that the same thing that it goes wrong, there is a immune mechanism that stops it, and the fact that this society survived so long, it means that if it goes wrong, it fixes itself. In chapter 10, I talk about an interesting issue with the Waldensians. The Inquisition talked about, had a discussion with the Inquisitor, had a discussion with the victim about God gave Moses the law. They both agreed to that. But the Catholic Inquisition said God gave Moses the law, and Moses is the thing, and he had the authority, and that authority was given later to the priests, and the priests to the later to the Christian bishops, and they and that gives legitimacy to the church and the church establishment, that God gave Moses the law, and that was transferred to the bishops and to the Pope, and this is how they and it works. It worked beautifully. On the other hand, the victim said, no, God gave Moses the law. Not Moses is not important. What is important is the law. You should read the book. It's more. It's a little bit more, but the issue is the same thing is the same thing is in the same Bible, and you can read it one way or another, and both are right. So what I mean is, when I said that biblical roots of American constitutionalism, I didn't mean that you read the Bible, no, that's how you behave, because everybody reads the Bible and understands something else. They didn't read it, they didn't write it so you don't understand, but that's what happened. People understand what they want. The biblical roots, I meant the roots started in biblical times by people who had customs, and the customs of Israel arrived to the pilgrims, and this is how it came into constitutionalism. Okay, now it's the last thing. Customary law is obviously authored by the people. every society has customs, and the customary law is authored by the people. In early chiefdoms, there was no guilt, no innocence. There were cycles of offense and retaliation until there was peace by mediation. The covenant is also a customary law, but it establishes guilt, innocence. There is a process to find whether you are guilty, and if you're guilty, you are punished. That didn't exist in other chiefdoms. This was copied from hierarchical societies. The framers of the Constitution wrote that parchment. I don't dispute that, and we have to give them credit for it. It's a great work. However, what they wrote there, it's a living system of government that existed in colonial America in their time. They had towns like Woburn. I don't know, Winchester probably was later, but in Massachusetts were about 20 towns like that, Andover, Salem. These towns manage themselves. They do that today. Many towns were in a colony, and the colony had an administration, and the towns did almost everything. The colony only managed those things that had to be managed by the colonies, and the union of colonies that didn't exist yet, but because there was a kingdom, there was almost, they couldn't care less about the rest. There was some harmonization between different colonies, but so when the union was established, the same principle was kept by the framers. They couldn't and they didn't change that. There is a sovereignty of state. There is a self-management of towns. In almost nowhere in the world exists Winchester police. Believe me, the police is in Italy. The police is the government, the state organized police. In Winchester and Woburn and everywhere there is their own police. This comes from those times, and that is what constitutionalism created. So basically it was a practice on the ground, and therefore the author of the American Constitution is with the people. This is not a frame that they invented, it is true. They engraved, the framers engraved on parchment what we, the people, conceived and trusted. It is not a simple copying. It takes understanding what works, why it works, what the people trust, and why they trust it. That's what I had to say. The rest is in the book, and you can find the book in several libraries, and obviously, if you want to buy it, then it's the same. What I like, what I would like. Obviously, I wrote it so that people read it. That's it. I'm open to answer questions. I can't promise I know all the answers, but.
With your background in studying human nature,
No,
the progressives in this country, especially around the world, envision a world government, and there's pressures all over. Do you ever conceive of a world government?
Of a what?
A world government.
Well, some people do. I heard that some people believe that there should be a world government, but that is somehow not in the same way, because the American constitutionalism says differently. We don't want world government. We don't want even even the federal government has to be restricted. Everything has to be down as close to the people as they are. Now, obviously, there are. I believe Mr. Putin wants a world government, and I don't know who he wants to be the governor of that government. But I mean, he talked to me. But anyway, yeah. I hope I answered. Yeah. Yes.
It does. I don't know if the internet is making it possible, but it seems like there is less respect for government in the United States. Maybe the internet just makes it easy for angry people to find each other.
Well, you'll be surprised to hear that that in other parts of the world there is more respect to a government. I mean, I just learned from a relative of mine that in the common market there is not respect, but the actual government of the common market is in Brussels, and the people who govern it are non-elected administrators. All kind of institutions, agriculture and all that, they are sent by the elected governments to administer all kind of regulations, and believe me, they are absurd, but still people respect those regulations, because otherwise everything will fall apart. In America, yeah, I mean, you want to respect your government and you would wish that the government will do whatever you like, but I mean, you know that there is a lot of criticism, and there is political conflicts, and conflicts even scientific, and everything is in dispute. So yeah, we want to everybody wants to respect the government, but I don't think, I mean, because I'm not American, I could say that in America there is way more open criticism and trying everybody obviously differently to influence the government to go in the direction he wants to be. He believes it's right. So, but yeah, there is respect. But sometimes you can hear all kind of against police, against the court, against this, that. Yes, it's. I think everybody criticizes everything, and there is good things about it and bad. It's not exactly my background, but now I'm just saying, comparing America to others, it's in America there is way more freedom and openness, and than obviously in Russia or Ukraine. Yeah.
This is to follow up on the question about, maybe I won't call it world government, but you mentioned the EU or the common market. It seems that there are countries join it voluntarily. They're not coerced into joining the EU. In fact, we recently had a country leave the EU, vote to leave the EU. But
yeah, we had one.
But there are lots of countries that are clamoring to join the EU. As soon as the Soviet Union broke up, there were a number of countries,
Yeah.
and there must be some economic and having standards and regulations that are common among all of those countries. There must be some advantage.
Well, okay. Again, I just an opinion. I heard you, and it's could be that it's economic, but this dream of having a European Union came about the end of the First World War. So it was maybe economics, but it was more like we don't want a war anymore. We rather compromise on everything else, but in order to have some sort of union, Now economically, I believe the United Kingdom got out of the system because of the economic. They see the economy more like they want more freedom and less bureaucratic domination. But again. I'm not going to write a book about the European community, but it's because I don't know. I just wrote about this because I think I know what I'm talking about. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what is your background? Is it anthropology?
No, my background is, well, I read during the last 10, 13 years also anthropology, but my background is, as I said, engineering. And what I do is mathematical modeling. And what I learned in engineering is that if you have an idea and you want to test whether it is right or wrong, you put it in numbers and you want to see if it works. And so basically, when I read about can a covenantal society work, how can it be, I put it in models, and then I came out, yes, it can work, provided there are these institutions and all that. So it's it's understanding the principles and what I know, how to test them with mathematical models. A mathematical model is basically a simple way to simulate the different controversies within the problem and the conflicts, and how those conflicts can be reconciled in. So that's my background, and this is what I said.
12 minutes late, so I was going to say you were in India.
Yes?
Well, I'm curious, did you find that every covenantal society was also a democracy, or is that, do they not go hand?
No. I think the only covenantal society there was a democracy was, not even the Puritans were democratic. The US became democratic. Democracy didn't come from the covenant. Okay, America is a constitutional democracy. The democracy came from Athens, it's true, but what you learned in school, it's right, and the rule of majority is democracy, and the Americans took that from it existed in Athens and later in Rome. At the beginning of Rome, democracy is not part of the covenantal system. What came from what covenantal societies contributed to it's the constitutional part. Constitutional part is a limitation to democracy. Democracy is rule of majority. That's what it means. The limitation, the majority can legislate what it wants, except if it legislates something that is against the Constitution, against the Parchment, against what we believe, that you cannot legislate. You cannot legislate, for example, something that denies freedom of people or life or pursuit of happiness. This is what the Constitution. So, no, the Puritans were not democratic. The Jewish communities were not democratic. No, today they start. I mean, they learn. It's today. We learn democracy, but no. That's a good question. I say it's good because I know the answer.
So Israel is currently not a covenantal society? I'm sorry, maybe I should know.
Israel is a covenantal society. In a way, I mean, America is not a covenantal society either, but it has a covenantal flavor. So does Israel. I don't know, in the political system in Israel, it works on a coalition. You have to put together a coalition in order to have a government there. which is part of what it happened. Now all these ideologies, or basically, are the ancient tribes, and each one comes with its own interest and all that. And the thing is, like in a covenantal society, they cook it in the coalition agreement, and then they respect it, they don't respect it, whatever. It's this part of it. And also what I just said, the people have a covenantal attitude. I don't know. They say, "Who are you?"
I know the Canadian is Canada. There's no constitution. Is there a Canadian?
There is a Canadian. It's as covenantal as the United States. It's very similar. I didn't go into that because it's too cold in Canada also. Yeah, today there are covenantal societies are still the communities in Presbyterian communities. They are managed the same way. What we say covenantal model, it's this came from Professor Elazar. He studied all this. So today there are countries that have a covenantal model. They are not covenantal societies, but they have these principles of the covenantal model, and these are what he mentioned is the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Holland, Switzerland, Israel, and the rest I don't remember, and it's not even in the book, so you'll have to buy another book, but yeah. Oh.
Do you think that there is a size limit to a covenantal society to really function like a covenantal society? So, for example, size limit, a size limit.
Yeah, no. The covenantal society, and I understand, the community has to be small. But that's also explained in the book. I didn't mention it. The community has to be small in order to function. But it can be very big because many communities become, it's networking. So autonomous communities create a regional system, and there are many regional systems. It could be millions. The Jewish communities in medieval Europe, they were a few millions. I mean, I think about 10 millions. The Puritans were also quite a lot, if you say in the whole world, and they were networking together. So there is no size limit, but because the power is mostly in the community, the rest is just harmonizing and all that. It's very little. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so the reason I think about that is because, for example, Winchester has a town meeting, which is a little bit covenantal. I don't know if you ever went to that.
Well, yeah.
It's fun, and then the whole peer pressure has to be small, right? So if the node doesn't exist or is not strong, then the
yeah, but then it's less covenantal. Then the state government start to encroach on the local powers, and the federal on the state powers. As long as the local power is strong and behaves and can resist all kind of and functions properly, then it works. If they don't, then obviously it becomes less covenantal and it's more hierarchical.
I'll make a statement. Is the American Constitution a living document? And if not, why not? In other words, we have some built-in things that can be changed here and there, but there's a whole group of right and left. It's immutable and it can be changed. What's your opinion of that? Okay,
so first of all, I talked about constitutionalism and not constitution. Everybody is constitutionalist. Everybody believes the Constitution is great and we have to listen to it. What you're asking is how you interpret what's written there, and that's already lawyer business, and thank God I'm not a lawyer. My father wouldn't let me be a lawyer, And I'm not going to answer your question because it's tricky. No, it's dangerous. Not dangerous, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Are you a lawyer? No, okay. So we have something in common. Okay.
Are you selling your book here, or
Pardon?
are you selling your book here?
No, but if somebody wants to buy the book and wants me to, okay, Danny, do you have the? If you, she has my cards. It's not a credit card; it's a business card. And you can write me an email, and I'll meet you either here or at the library and sign the anyone who wants the. You can buy the book in on Amazon. You can buy the book. What is called this? Barnes and how do you? Barnes and Nobles. It's everywhere. Yeah, you have a discount if you buy it from. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. If you, but you still can check. Maybe Amazon gives you cheaper. But the thing is that there is an electronic version which I don't know if you like, but that's cheaper. And it's what? That's it. If somebody wants dedication. I'm just write me an email. We'll meet you either here or in the library. I know how to get here, and no, you believe me. I got here. That's the proof. That's it.
May I assume you're living in Massachusetts now?
Yes, I have been in Massachusetts for 3 years now, and okay, because of these people here, that's two of my grandkids, and I have another two that they have better things to do than come. Okay. Thank you.